Welcome to another episode of the Cat Breeding for Beginners podcast. I'm Pamela and I breed British Shorthairs in Perth, Western Australia. I have a real passion for cat breeding and exhibiting, and I want to share my knowledge and experience with you. I'm on a mission to help new cat breeders go from feeling intimidated, confused and having trouble getting started to confidently breeding happy and healthy cats whilst enjoying this amazing hobby. Before we get started, make sure you visit my website and download your copy of my helpful guide, Advice to New Breeders, where experienced breeders share some great tips they wish someone told them when they started breeding. You can find the link on my homepage at www.catbreedingforbeginners.com. Just look for the picture of Angelica with her kittens. When you're a new breeder and it comes time to buy yourself a new breeding cat, to adopt a new breeding cat from another breeder, there's a few things that are really important to think about, and it can be really challenging to make sure that you're asking all the right questions and getting all the information that you need. One of the things that is really important to think about is the conditions that are going to be imposed on you. Now, this is normally a bigger thing with stud cats. Breeders tend to impose more conditions on stud cats, and that's probably because a stud cat can have more impact. A stud cat might be able to go to, he could go to like 5 or 6 girls in one season, whereas a girl can only go to one boy in a season. So there tends to be a little bit more conditions around the sale of a stud cat, but it can also equally apply to a female cat. And these are things that might include restrictions on what you can and can't do in terms of selling kittens and things like that. Now, it's really important that you find out all of this information right up front. And the best way to do it is to get it in writing. And when I say get it in writing, I'm not talking about, a legal document by any means. And I talk about this in my Stud Cats mini course. So if you've already done my mini course, you're probably saying, yes, I know all of this, Pamela. But for those of you that haven't done it, the thing that's really important is to get it in writing in some way, shape or form, because then you can use it later. More about that in a minute. What I mean by that is that you might have a conversation with them by email, you might have a conversation with them on Facebook Messenger, all of these things that you can copy and paste and keep for later. Maybe do a screenshot of something, all of that. And it sounds like I'm being really distrustful, and I probably am, but I think in the long run, it's going to help you out later. So you need to ask questions about, can I sell kittens that come from this cat to other breeders? Can I sell cats for breeding from this cat? How many generations do I have to breed forward before I can do that? What other restrictions do you want to impose on me? Am I allowed to sell this cat as an entire cat, which I would never do, which I just don't even, I think it's still worth asking and getting that in writing. And I think the breeder's probably going to insist on it more so than you're going to insist on it. But that cat can't then go to another home as a breeding cat. That cat needs to be desexed before it goes to another home. Are you actually allowed to rehome the cat? Does the breeder say that if you're going to rehome the cat, you have to give them the first option to buy it back? There's a lot of different things that could be worked into what you're doing when you're getting this cat from this breeder. Now, yes, you're paying them money and you're adopting a cat from them, but it does come with certain expectations on both sides. And their expectations are something you need to find out in advance. Because if you don't, they can come to bite you on the butt later on. And this has happened to me. When I first started breeding years and years ago. Someone I got a cat off said that, that I was only supposed to do this particular thing with it, and that I didn't do that particular thing with it, and that I'd breached their agreement and I was a bad person. And they told a lot of other people that I was a bad person for breaching this particular agreement. Now, at the time, I had nothing to say one way or the other that I had or hadn't breached any agreement. And it turned out that later on, a couple of years later, I actually found the evidence that I could have used back then, where the person was actually having a conversation with me about this particular thing that I did, and they were okay with it. So, yeah. Anyway, that's where it comes down to. It's sometimes good to keep records of these kinds of things, because we're not talking about a legal document. No one's suing anybody. That's a really silly thing to think of. But what the actual documentation will do is it sets out an expectation on both sides. If someone has said something to you casually, it's very easy to forget that you've said that casually, or to have a different version of events in your mind as to what you might have said. But if you have actually got it in writing, then it's 100% the case that you've had to, there's something about your brain that it just recognises it a bit better if you've had to type it down and send it to someone. And also then that person's got that record of it as well. So if there is any question about whether or not you could or couldn't do something, you've always got that back to refer to. And maybe it's you, maybe you agreed to something. And you might not have remembered agreeing to it, but there it is in black and white where you've saved it. And yes, you did agree to that, so you need to actually honour that agreement. So it's good to have it written down in that regard. The other thing is, and I just really hope and pray it never comes to this for you, but if you actually have a copy of something like that you've agreed to, you have it later so that if there is some sort of falling out, some sort of drama, some sort of, what happened to me where they said she didn't do this or she was supposed to do that, she didn't do it and look at her, she's bad. If you have that thing that says it was okay for you to do that or that you'd agreed to this or agreed to that, you actually can defend yourself. And I think it's silly to get into big Facebook wars over stuff and all of that. But at the end of the day, if someone is saying that you've done something that you shouldn't have done, but you actually were allowed to do it, you have that evidence. You can just say, well, you need to change your story or I'm going to share this with everybody. And that's fine. And I think that's where I think that people should live by their actions. If you've said something or done something, then, you've said something or done something. And that's certainly the case. I think if I think about the stuff that I've said over the years. I've probably said and done stuff that, but I said it and I did it. So, if you said it and you did it, you have to live by it. And that's where it can be useful because you might be able to say, well, this person's saying this, but here you have clear in black and white that I didn't agree to that or I did agree to that. Or I have done this or I haven't done that. So that's where that becomes important. But I think that's, in the scheme of things, that's part of it. But the most important part of it is that you are both really, really clear about what you're agreeing to. You're really clear about what your intentions are. They're really clear about what their expectations are. And everybody is on the same page. Because the people that you get your cats from, I'm really, really hoping that in the long run, they are going to be people that you can build a relationship with and get support from, get assistance from, have a friendship from, just have that happy, good feeling between you. And you will get to that if you start off on the right foot. Now, I have a cat. He's retired now, but I have a cat that I bought from Europe, and his breeder, lovely lady, she doesn't speak great English, and there was a lot of sometimes explaining on both sides, but but what we were doing was definitely spelled out, and we both knew where we were and what we were going to do and what was going to happen with this cat, and we still have that relationship today. I still send her photos and videos of him. She still comments back how much she misses and loves him, and that's a really warm and wonderful thing to have. If there had been some dispute over something that we'd maybe agreed to verbally, and a problem with that, we wouldn't have that relationship today. And I really value those relationships. I really find them to be part of my hobby, is those special relationships that you form with people. So I want you to have that as well. So as much as possible, make sure that you're really clear about what conditions are being imposed on you, what you're agreeing to, what you can and can't do with this cat, what their expectations are. If you have any questions about can I do this or can I do that, maybe they might say that you can't sell any kittens for breeding until the 3rd generation. But maybe you've got a really close friend that you're working with and you want to be able to help them. So if you ask the breeder, okay, I'll agree to that, but can my friend have a kitten or a mating from this cat? And my friend's name is this and you know her from there or whatever. And if the breeder says yes, that's okay. So then you want to make sure that you have that clear before you start, and that everybody knows what's going on in that regard. And then you're all on the same page and everything's happy going forward. And I had a situation like that. If I think back to my first stud cat, I was asked by his breeder. I didn't want to sell any breeding cats to anybody, and I think she even said that I couldn't. But she did ask me if there was another breeder that she was friends with, if that breeder needed a kitten, could I give that breeder a kitten? And it ended up I did, so it was fine. But that was all agreed to well and truly up front. Interestingly, a few years later, there was some falling out between, I guess, everybody, and that then became, you sold a cat for breeding that I'd said that you couldn't do, which was interesting because I did actually have all the emails for that, but I didn't worry about pursuing it because it's Sometimes stuff's not worth it. And that's probably another big tip for you as well. Just sometimes you got to let stuff go. It might make you angry, it might get you a bit wound up, but just let it go. This is a hobby. It's a hobby. It's nothing more than that. So if you get everything set up first and you know what your expectations are, you know what their expectations are, you know what the restrictions are, you know what you can and can't do, if you get that all sorted out right at the beginning, you have a copy of it, then that's going to make the what comes next a little bit easier for everybody. So that's my advice about something that you should do when you are getting a new breeding cat. And I really hope that was helpful for you. Thanks for listening. Make sure you visit www.catbreedingforbeginners.com where you can find articles, guides, courses and more. Plus, make sure you check out my amazing New Cat Breeders Club. It's a supportive space where new cat breeders can learn, share and help each other. I only take new members a few times a year, so sign up to make sure you don't miss out.